The moment wasn't loud. There was no screaming crowd, no flashing cameras, no dramatic confrontation for the public to witness. But behind those velvet ropes, under the cold, calculating lights of New York Fashion Week, something devastating happened that insiders say Meghan Markle never saw coming. She was stopped, physically stopped, blocked, denied. And in that split second, the illusion shattered. Because according to insiders whispering through Manhattan's most exclusive fashion circles, Meghan didn't just miss a show, she was deliberately refused entry. Let that sink in. This wasn't a scheduling conflict. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a last-minute mix-up by security. This was intentional. Security reportedly stepped forward with calm, rehearsed professionalism. No anger, no hesitation, just cold execution of orders. And then came the sentence that insiders say hit harder than any headline she had ever read about herself. "We're sorry, but you are no longer welcome." 14 words. 14 words that, according to witnesses, froze Meghan Markle in place. Because this was New York. This was Fashion Week. This was supposed to be her territory. This was supposed to be her comeback. Instead, it became her public exile. Witnesses say Meghan arrived confident, composed, wearing the carefully constructed calm of someone who believed she still belonged. She wasn't alone. She had support beside her, she had strategy, she had timing, every detail calculated, every appearance intentional. Because appearances were never just appearances for Meghan Markle, they were messages, signals, statements. She wasn't just attending, she was reclaiming, or at least she thought she was. Because inside, something had already shifted. The decision, insiders claim, wasn't made by security guards standing at the door. It was made far above them. Quiet conversations behind glass walls. Emergency discussions between organizers, sponsors, brand executives, and PR strategists who had one shared fear: risk. Not financial risk, reputational risk. Because in today's ruthless media ecosystem, association is everything. And according to insiders, Meghan Markle had become something no brand wants attached to its name: unpredictable, volatile, explosive, and worst of all, uncontrollable. Sources claim sponsors feared one thing above all else: that her presence would hijack the narrative, that instead of fashion, headlines would become about her. Instead of designers, it would be Meghan dominating the story. Instead of elegance, chaos. And no one wanted to be collateral damage. Not anymore. Witnesses say the realization didn't hit Meghan instantly. At first, confusion, a flicker of disbelief, the subtle tightening of her expression as she tried to process the unthinkable. Because rejection was something Meghan had spent years outrunning, reinventing herself beyond, positioning herself above. She wasn't supposed to be the one outside. She was supposed to be the one inside, front row, center stage, controlling the narrative. But now, she wasn't controlling anything. Because behind the scenes, insiders say the shift against her had been building for years. Slowly, silently, relentlessly. There was a time when Meghan Markle wasn't just welcomed, she was worshipped. Every appearance was an event, every outfit analyzed, every word dissected, praised, amplified. She wasn't just famous, she was untouchable. When she stepped away from royal life, the world leaned in closer, not further away. The interview that shook the monarchy didn't weaken her, it elevated her. She became the symbol of rebellion, of independence, of survival against an institution portrayed as suffocating and cold. Doors didn't close then, they exploded open. Hollywood welcomed her, media platforms chased her, global brands pursued her, powerful figures aligned with her. She wasn't just part of the conversation, she was the conversation. But power built on narrative is fragile because narrative requires belief, and belief requires consistency, and consistency is where everything began to crack. Insiders say the first fractures were invisible to the public. Whispers, private complaints, uncomfortable experiences quietly shared among insiders who operated behind the glamour. Staff members allegedly describing tension, creative partners privately expressing frustration, executives quietly questioning whether collaboration was worth the risk. Nothing public, nothing provable, just enough to create doubt. And doubt spreads faster than truth. Because in elite industries like fashion, perception is currency. And once perception begins to shift, recovery becomes nearly impossible. Fashion, more than any industry, thrives on exclusivity. It doesn't forgive easily, it doesn't forget, and it doesn't tolerate unpredictability. Designers want muses, not controversies. Brands want ambassadors, not liabilities. And insiders say Meghan had slowly, almost invisibly, crossed an invisible line. At first it was subtle, invitations that didn't arrive, opportunities that quietly disappeared, projects that stalled without explanation, public enthusiasm that cooled. But she still had relevance, she still had attention, she still had the ability to command headlines. Until now. Because being turned away at the door isn't just rejection, it's a signal. A message sent not just to her, but to everyone watching. It tells the industry where you stand. And right now, insiders say Meghan Markle stands outside, not symbolically, literally. And perhaps the most devastating part wasn't the refusal itself. It was the silence that followed. No public defense. No immediate outrage from fashion elites. No flood of insiders rushing forward to correct the narrative. Just quiet acceptance, as if this outcome had already been expected. Because insiders say this wasn't spontaneous. It was the culmination. The final confirmation of a shift that had been unfolding behind closed doors long before that night. A shift that even Prince Harry, according to whispers circulating in elite social circles, may now be recognizing. Sources claim he has grown quieter, more withdrawn, less visible, as if he understands something Meghan refuses to accept. That the world they once commanded no longer responds the same way. Because attention isn't loyalty, and headlines aren't protection, and influence is never permanent, especially when the narrative escapes her control. And now, standing outside those doors, watching a world she once dominated continue without her, Meghan Markle faced something more terrifying than rejection: irrelevance. And irrelevance is something no public figure survives easily. Because fame can survive scandal, fame can survive controversy, but fame cannot survive being ignored. And insiders say the most dangerous part of this moment isn't what happened at the door, it's what it represents: a turning point, a fracture, a warning. Because in elite circles, exile doesn't happen loudly, it happens quietly, one closed door at a time, until suddenly there are no doors left to open. What happened after those words left the security guard's mouth is what insiders say truly exposed the depth of the collapse Meghan Markle never believed could happen to her. Because rejection alone wasn't the story, it was her reaction. Witnesses standing just feet away say there was a moment, brief but unmistakable, where Meghan froze completely, her posture stiffened. Her face, usually so controlled, so practiced, so media-ready, suddenly betrayed something raw, something human, something vulnerable. Shock. Not the kind of shock that fades quickly. The kind that arrives when reality doesn't match the version of the world you've built inside your head. Because Meghan wasn't just attending another event, she was testing something. Testing whether she still had power, testing whether she still had pull, testing whether the doors she once walked through effortlessly would still open on command. And now, she had her answer. They wouldn't. Sources say she initially tried to reason with them. Calm, controlled, measured. Asking questions with the quiet authority of someone used to being accommodated, someone used to problems being solved for her, someone used to rules bending. But the security staff didn't bend. They didn't hesitate. They didn't apologize beyond the script they'd been given, because this wasn't their decision. This was instruction. Final. Witnesses claim Meghan's expression began to change. The calm cracked. The polished composure slipped. The realization began to settle in, not just that she was being denied entry, but that she was being denied status. Because in that world, access is everything. And losing access means losing relevance. One insider described the moment as the instant she realized she wasn't protected anymore. Not by the royal aura, not by the media sympathy, not by the cultural momentum she once commanded. She was just another person outside. And inside, the show went on without her. Lights flashing, cameras rolling, designers celebrated, celebrities applauded. All without Meghan Markle. And that may have been the most devastating part of all. Because the machine didn't stop, it didn't pause, it didn't acknowledge her absence, it simply replaced her. That's the brutal truth of fame. No matter how powerful you once were, the system always moves forward. Always. Insiders say Meghan eventually turned away, but not before making it clear she understood exactly what was happening. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't miscommunication. This was exclusion. Deliberate. Calculated. Permanent. Because in elite circles, once the signal is sent, it spreads quickly. Word travels through private group chats, through quiet phone calls, through off-record conversations between powerful figures who shape culture from behind the scenes. And the message was simple. She was no longer essential. This moment didn't exist in isolation. It was the latest confirmation of something insiders say had already been unfolding across multiple industries. Fashion wasn't the first door to close. It was just the most visible. Because behind the glamour, Meghan's attempts to rebuild her influence had reportedly encountered resistance at every level. Media executives grew cautious, brand strategists became hesitant, public relations teams began weighing risk against reward, and increasingly deciding the risk was too high. Not because she lacked recognition, but because recognition alone wasn't enough anymore. Recognition without control becomes unpredictability, and unpredictability terrifies institutions built on stability. The sources close to the couple say the shift has created tension behind the scenes. Not loud, explosive tension, but quiet, heavy tension. The kind that fills rooms without words being spoken. Because Prince Harry, insiders claim, has begun to see what Meghan still refuses to fully accept. That the world outside the monarchy operates on different rules. Inside the royal system, their roles were guaranteed. Their relevance secured by centuries of tradition. Their presence protected by institutional power. Outside it, everything had to be earned. Constantly, relentlessly, without protection, without immunity, without mercy. And that reality, insiders say, has been far harsher than either of them expected. Because independence comes with exposure. Exposure comes with scrutiny. And scrutiny, once it turns negative, becomes almost impossible to reverse. Sources claim Harry has grown increasingly introspective, less eager to appear, less confident in the strategies that once seemed promising. He had believed they could create something new, something stronger, something freer. Instead, they found themselves fighting battles they couldn't control. Battles against perception, battles against narrative, battles against irrelevance. Because the most dangerous moment for any public figure isn't when people hate you, it's when people stop caring entirely. And insiders say that's the shift Meghan is now facing. Not universal rejection, but something colder, indifference. The fashion industry didn't stage a public rejection. It didn't announce anything officially. It didn't need to. It simply stopped including her. And exclusion speaks louder than confrontation, because confrontation creates headlines. Exclusion creates silence, and silence erases influence. What makes this moment even more significant, insiders say, is what it represents symbolically. Fashion has always been a reflection of cultural power. The people seated in those front rows aren't just guests. They are signals. Signals of who matters. Signals of who shapes narrative. Signals of who remains relevant. And Meghan's absence sent a signal of its own. One that insiders say everyone understood immediately, because in elite industries, presence is validation, absence is verdict. Still, those close to Meghan insist she hasn't given up. They say she remains determined, focused, convinced that reinvention is still possible, that public perception can still shift, that new projects can still restore her influence. Because reinvention is something Meghan has done before. She reinvented herself from actress to royal, from royal to independent global figure, from insider to outsider. But reinvention requires opportunity, and opportunity requires access. And access is exactly what she lost that night. Standing outside those doors, watching a world she once influenced continue without her, Meghan Markle faced a truth few public figures ever prepare for. Power is never permanent. Influence is never guaranteed. And the same world that once lifts, you can quietly decide to move on. Because fame isn't owned, it's borrowed. And eventually, sometimes suddenly, sometimes slowly, it gets taken back. Now, insiders say Meghan stands at a crossroads unlike any she has faced before. Not the dramatic exit from royal life, not the explosive interviews, not the media wars. This is quieter, more dangerous. Because this isn't about leaving power, this is about power leaving her. And the most haunting question isn't what happened at that door, it's what happens next. Because in a world obsessed with relevance, survival depends on one thing above all else: whether anyone is still watching.